Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Des Moines. I'm actually playing this ship with the legendary upgrade. I spent a lot of time this last couple of weeks playing battleships, especially those steel battleships, to try and re-rate them and organize them for 2024. And I needed some breaks in between, because only playing battleships is not a great idea for your sanity. You gotta play something different. And Des Moines with Legendary Upgrade is pretty fun. And I had some pretty interesting games. And I wanted to talk about some of the really nice opportunities you can get with a cruiser. I think a lot of time at higher tier, it can feel a little bit difficult to play a cruiser just because of how much overmatch there is and how insane the ranges get. But cruisers can be very, very enjoyable when you stay alive to the mid to late game. That's the key here, is trying to live that early portion of the game. So with a Des Moines like this, trying to take an island where I'm going to be relatively safe is my goal. Of course, if there's a carrier in the game, it's going to be pretty hard to sit on an island without just getting bombed over and over again. I fully understand that. This game is a very good example of what you can do when the game opens up. And this is where I really enjoy cruisers a lot. I'm not as big a fan of the open water HE spam from longer ranges and farm people. It's fine, but I just don't enjoy that as much. I like to get into the thick of things a little bit more, brawl it out, and that can happen with cruisers as well. This game is a very fortunate example where we only have 3 battleships to deal with, and the rest of the ships are things we can actually fight at closer ranges. So don't think this is going to happen every single game. You do have to play a little more passive than I'm going to in this one. But hey, sitting on islands like this can work out pretty well for you, especially if you find opportunities to farm people. This Rhode Island here is taking a lot of damage from our AP and our high explosive. And once he's gone, we can start to look to push. And that's the real enjoyment that I have here. Not every map has good islands, but as you play, especially once you get to tier 10, you should get a feel for a lot of these maps and where people like to go and which islands you can use to be a little bit more aggressive while staying relatively safe. I had to sit there for quite a while, honestly, before I decided to push. And the main reason I'm actually pushing here is not necessarily because I suddenly decided I wanted to. It turns out it was a good idea. But the enemy sub got through into our backline, and sitting stationary on an island where there's a submarine coming to shotgun you, probably not the best idea. Hopefully we can catch whatever destroyer this is. Yeah, Des Moines got a lot of utility, and at closer ranges like this, if you're allowed to get in like this, the DPM is still insane. Des Moines is still such an excellent cruiser. It does still suffer from the passive meta that we have at higher tier and the overmatch. But this is where I want to show you some games where, or at least this game, I was able to push in and actually get into close range again in the Des Moines. It's a lot of fun. Not the easiest thing in most matches, but when you get matchmaker like this, it is very enjoyable. In fact, I'm not even going to cap. You notice by the scores that our team is down on every cap, but we're still ahead on points. It's because this is quickly turning into a bit of a blowout. The AP catching this enemy Des Moines and very nice citadels. You're not going to see that every time. Des Moines has kind of trolly dispersion for a cruiser, but the reload typically is going to make that up for you. Legendary upgrade on this ship is not necessary, but I've been playing it with it just because it's kind of fun to have this extreme acceleration and maneuverability. It's nice to have on islands. One of the main reasons I really recommend taking propulsion mod on a lot of different ships. Anytime you're looking to play around islands, propulsion mod is just going to allow you to position your ship better and quicker, dealing with incoming spotting or threats, that kind of thing. And Des Moines just takes that to an extra level with its legendary upgrade. The AP here doing all right, should be leading maybe a little bit more, but HE is also really good. Des Moines is excellent at farming down a lot of these battleships, assuming you can keep yourself from getting hit by a lot of that overmatch. Now that's just destroyers and submarines left. This is a bit of a special game for the Des Moines, where we essentially have free reign over the enemy team. When there isn't that carrier spotting and that long-range overmatch, Des Moines is such a beast, and here we just get to push these enemy DDs back into spawn. The radar has always been excellent on this ship, and even though Salem has that super heal where maybe a more aggressive playstyle would fit the Salem, The lack of maneuverability is certainly a bit of a downside on Salem compared to just getting used to Des Moines Legendary upgrade. But the other thing is the radar is just not as long range, and so here we can actually use it to help take out this Kagero. And that's a Kraken with less than 90,000 damage. Pretty crazy. Typically Kraken games, you gotta get a little more damage than that, but in this one, maybe we finished off a few kills, certainly, that could be said. But honestly, it's just a low HP kind of game. There just weren't that many capital ships, any battleships, heavy cruisers, that kind of thing with a lot of HP to farm. These games can happen, although they are quite rare. But I had to share this game with you guys because it was just that fun to push in again with the Des Moines. My aim here is not amazing. I haven't played a ton with Des Moines. Like I said, this is kind of just breaks in between playing with the battleships for the last couple of weeks. So I would need to play a little more to get my aim down properly. But we don't quite get the 6th kill. And it's just the submarine left. And what does he do? He comes in and gets rammed. What an excellent addition to the game. I'm so glad that submarines are here. That was sarcasm, by the way. Well, it's crazy. Crazy kind of gameplay. But hey, less than 100k for that Kraken. Kind of hilarious. But what do you do in games where you're not able to push in as quickly? Sometimes you do just have to be patient. You have to wait, and you have to play on islands. You have to play further back. And it's really those mid to late game scenarios where you're wanting to have a lot of HP on your cruisers, because they are just so strong in those scenarios where you're able to push in without getting into a crossfire. You can apply a lot of pressure to the enemy team with your consistent damage and your utility. So here, I'm going to show you a little trick. You probably know about this one. I've mentioned this before in a lot of videos whenever I'm playing a Des Moines specifically, but other cruisers as well. We're going to be able to shoot this devastation without being spotted. How does that work? Every once in a while I'll do this and someone will call hacks or cheats, right? The key to spotting is, I believe it's the highest point on your ship is what is spotting. So anytime you can hide that highest, tallest point of your ship, that's where you're spotting enemies from, and that's where the enemies will spot you from. You can hide that behind a tall island like this, poke your front guns around the corner, and still be able to shoot at the enemy. We do get spotted here. I get a little careless and not getting far enough back, but you can see how quickly we just go undetected again. So you don't actually need to hide your entire ship to stay undetected. It's a very strong tactic you can use on a lot of different cruisers. Des Moines is probably the best example, but a lot of different cruisers can make use of this. Des Moines is just extra scary because the DPM is so high, and if you're able to stay undetected, yeah, you can do a ton of damage. The salvos here are getting a little bit greedy. I was trying to light all 4 fires. I noticed this devastation damage control to fire, and he didn't have fire prevention, so I thought maybe we can get the full barbecue. Not quite to be in this one, but 3 out of the 4 is pretty good. Mosfa got one of those fires, so we only got 2 of them. Now that he goes broadside, of course, just swapping over to that AP. But patience is the key when it comes to playing a lot of these cruisers. You don't want to overextend, especially in that early game. It can be difficult, and sometimes if you do try and play aggressive, even like this, getting up to an island, sometimes you'll get spotted, sometimes carriers are going to deal with you. You have to worry about that. Just definitely see if there's a carrier in the game, maybe play a little more passive. In this one, I have no idea why this Ohio reversed out to shoot me here. He's exposing himself to literally my entire team on this flank just to shoot at me. I am the most difficult ship to get access to. He has to expose his ship to literally everyone else just to shoot me. I don't know why, but hey, we managed to survive it. This is again where we want to be using propulsion mod, or in this case, the legendary upgrade as well, giving us better maneuverability to reverse behind this island quicker and maneuver our ship where we want it to be. Certainly, if you don't have the legendary upgrade, you could take range mod, you can take reload mod. They are both going to do quite well. Range mod's a little difficult, even as much as it's tempting because of how passive the games can be. It's just a little difficult to use because these shells get so floaty out to longer ranges. It's usable, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to aim at those ranges, certainly, with Des Moines floaty arcs. So taking ledge mod is just a pretty enjoyable time. I tend to get myself into more aggressive positions, more interested in pushing. This can also lead to dodging shells at closer ranges, that kind of thing. Look at the damage we're doing, by the way, with the armor piercing to his bow. The bow section is typically unsaturated on battleships. So at closer ranges, if you get that opportunity, if you have the high explosive to bullpen there, definitely worth going after. But also if they show enough broadside and you have smaller caliber guns, battleship guns are just going to overpen. But Des Moines won't, and the damage output is pretty spicy. The other thing about Des Moines is anytime there's a cyclone, and any ship with radar really, you can really abuse cyclones here, where you just get to spot enemy ships that can't spot you, and you can catch them off guard and hopefully land some citadels. There, we finally managed to get one here. So the Des Moines is a pretty good ship still in 2024. I'm not really rating it here, but I enjoy it. I still enjoy playing Des Moines, even though it's an older ship in the game. I still think it's quite fun to play. And as far as recommending new players to play different lines, I think American cruisers are decent, whether you go for the Worcester or the Des Moines. I think they're pretty decent for new players. Harder to play, potentially, but at lower tiers can be pretty good to learn on. Of course, the major recommendation is destroyers, just go for the daring line. That one's the easy one to recommend to people. Get yourself a daring. But for cruisers, you know, Des Moines, Worcester line's pretty good. The Russian cruiser lines are also pretty good. A little harder at mid-tiers, but they're also pretty strong. Hindenburg can be decent as well, but I wouldn't recommend going for gimmick lines like, well, the Golden Lion, however it's pronounced in front of us, Venezia line. They're a little more gimmick heavy. So Des Moines, nice to see that it works quite well in today's meta, as well as being pretty good for new players. As for the build here on the Des Moines, I don't necessarily recommend this build, but like I've said in a few previous videos, I am starting to use some more AA builds just to try and deal with the carrier focus. They don't necessarily work that well, but I am trying it. A more proper build probably uses top grade gunner. You can see we get a lot of value out of that if we're playing up towards islands and able to push in those mid games. You can run heavy AP, although I think you want to shoot a reasonable amount of high explosive and armor piercing too, so I would just focus on adrenaline rush and then some survivability upgrades personally. And then instead of focused fire training, you could take priority target, for example. As far as the upgrades go, the equipment, I'm actually really enjoying Legendary mod. I should probably play with more of these Legendary mods to try and put them in a bit of a tier list and rate them in, maybe not in order that I'd get them, just which ones are worthwhile if you enjoy the ship they are for. That's on the back burner though. That won't happen for a long time. Don't think that's coming anytime soon. But that is something I would like to do at some point. But this legendary upgrade here gives us better rudder shift, but more importantly, that time taken to reach full engine power, 50%. Pretty strong when also stacked with propulsion mod 1 here too. So that is why this ship can accelerate so quickly. It's pretty fun to play around with. You do lose DPM or range depending on which one you would go for otherwise, but the extra maneuverability is pretty enjoyable. It's great for around islands, but you can also dodge open water with that too pretty well. It's kind of hard to hit a Des Moines with a legendary upgrade if they know what they're doing. It's not easy, certainly, but there's plenty of Des Moines players who are fairly proficient with this, and as a battleship player, it can be very difficult to deal with them. Main armaments mod, and then I'm just taking extra radar duration. Not necessary, because if you catch someone within your radar for the full duration, normally, they're probably dead anyway. This ship has so much DPM, but yeah, I figured I would take it because I have it. And that's gonna about do it for this Des Moines video. Just a nice little break from the battleships that we have been looking at. Certainly that's what these games were, in between, weaving them in between, playing all these steel battleships. A few other cruisers as well, and DDs, but I had some fun times with Des Moines, especially playing the Ledge mod, so I had to share that with you guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.